The monster is just trying to keep you safe, protect you from things that are no longer a risk, playing old messages that aren't true anymore. The monster is well-meaning, but she has an outdated playbook. And you've got to just question her, talk with her, understand where she's coming from, so you can realize what's true and what's not.
Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. It is such a joy and an honor to welcome Suzy Burke here with us today. Suzy is a social and organizational psychologist and a National Institute of Mental Health scholar. She's also the co-author of the book Headamentals, along with her co-authors Berman and Rhett. And Suzy, it is really a delight to have you here today because this topic, what you share about in the book, is so important to, especially in this time of change in our world. So I'm so thankful for you. Welcome.
It's great to be with you, Baird. An honor for me.
So how about we start with what does Headamentals mean to you?
It's fundamentals for your head. It's a word that we made up. Actually, Ryan made it up. I thought to myself, no one knows this word. But I think it catches attention. I think it really capsulizes what this book is all about. Because as you said, there's so much going on in our heads, and we often don't know how to control it. And just we do exercises for our bodies. This is fundamentals for your head. In fact, we think of ourselves as head coaches because we're coaching people about how to get control of their thoughts and make them positive rather than dragging them into the mud.
And so we're going to touch soon on what those fundamentals for the head are. For now, if we were to just imagine that we all practice what it is that you teach, what would be different in our life? Like, why should we listen today?
If you practice what we teach, you would lean forward at the exact moments that you need to. Hard conversations, big decisions, bold moves. Instead of being fearful, you'd lean in and make things happen. You would think more clearly. When you've got a lot of noise going on in your head, it's like a browser running wild, with 36 tabs open and you can't see anything. When you can get control of your thoughts, you think more clearly, more strategically, more concisely, and everything just kind of calms down. And the other thing I would mention, Barrett, is that when we call it the monster, when the monster is whispering in your ear that you're not good enough, you're not enough, period, that shapes how other people experience you. Because if you feel doubtful, if you feel scared, if you feel unsure, people see that. It leaks. And it causes uncertainty in them. If you're the leader, they see you being unsure, they get unsure as well. If you're a perfectionist, that becomes pressure. If you're anxious, that's going to impact how they show up, the risks that they're willing to take. So it really impacts everything. And of course, emotions are contagious, right? We all know that. So if a leader is really nervous and scared, that's going to ripple through the team or the organization.
Yeah. And their family and
absolutely. Absolutely. Even more so, yeah.
And so share with us a little bit about this quote unquote monster.
The monster is that negative self-talk that so many of us have. The National Science Foundation discovered that we have up to 60,000 thoughts a day. 80% of them are negative, and 95% of them are on an endless loop. That is 40,000 negative thoughts circling around in your head every day. And often it comes from past experience. As a kid, you raised your hand in class and the kids laughed at you. And you're getting ready to speak in a big meeting. You might say to yourself, wait a minute, don't take the risk. If a boss told you that your work wasn't good enough, you're going to always be worried and working overtime and doing extra and being afraid to let anything go because of that you're not good enough message that you received. That's the monster. In fact, I've given my monster a name. I call her Alexandra.
Mm.
Call her Alex for short. But it's good to sort of have a picture of her in my mind, because when she's haunting me, I can say, Alex, stop, stop.
Mm.
Those tapes are no longer true. It's no longer accurate or real.
Yeah.
That's a message from my childhood that doesn't play anymore.
Yeah. And I imagine that Alex or all of our own, inner quote unquote monsters are very loving and protective in why they do it, because as you said,
Exactly.
they're trying to protect us from getting hurt again. And yet they just don't know that we've grown up, that we don't need
Exactly.
self-talk anymore, that protection. So, it's such a funny thing, because if they were to take their, quote unquote monster, mask off, we'd probably just see a really scared, confused little child.
Exactly. You've nailed it. Where you have. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So, what are the fundamentals for the head?
Well, I think the first thing is to understand where they're coming from. We talk about monster fuels, and there are 6 of them. The first, of course, is imposter syndrome. 71% of Americans have imposter syndrome at some point. And if you're a high achiever, even more. Albert Einstein, the man who helped us realize how we think about physics, he thought he was a fraud. He thought he was a fraud. Meryl Streep, 3 Academy Awards, 4 Emmys, 2 SAG Awards. She's always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And Howard Schultz, the 3-time leader of Starbucks, said almost no one gets to that corner office and thinks they belong. So if Einstein can think he's a fraud, Meryl Streep thinks she's not a good actor, and Howard Schultz thinks that no one belongs in the corner office, that's endemic, right? We are, it's actually evolutionary. One of my clients calls it your reptilian brain, because thousands of years ago, we had to be alert for danger. And our brains don't distinguish between a vicious tiger about to attack you from a kind of scowling look from someone in the C-suite. They both signal danger. And your amygdala, which is the emotional part of your brain, takes over and fight, flight, or freeze. And the message never gets to your frontal cortex, where you're logical. So things get stuck in that emotional part and don't get out unless you can take back control.
And so, tell us for a moment a little bit about your journey. Like, how did you get to do this work, and what motivated you to share this with the world?
Rhett, who's also an MG100 coach, had been working on, he had an idea probably 5 years ago based on things that his clients had said to him. And he hooked up with Ryan Berman, who's the second, the other author. And they spent some time just working on this thing. And Rhett said to me, we're business partners, by the way. Rhett said to me, I've got this book I'd like you to take a look at. I said, okay. And when I read it, I thought they're onto something that's really important, but there was no science in it. And being a psychologist, right? To me, there's so much science that could really inform it. So I said, Rhett, boy, you want me to just like edit it? Do you want me to make it better? He said, oh, do make it better. So it's now like 60,000 words of lots of, and Ryan coaches a lot of corporate clients. And he reached out to a lot of his clients and said, we're writing this book. Give me a time when your monster got in your way. So it's got all sorts of stories from clients about how their monsters tried to sabotage them and how they either did or didn't win that discussion. So Brian would say, Brett's the founder of the science and Ryan's the story.
Mm-hmm.
But almost every client that I coach, we talk about executive presence. In fact, that's really code for monster. You don't fully. Client, and she said, I've got this monster in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh my God, that's it. That's the analogy, right? because it is. But instead of trying to defeat it, just have to talk with it, understand it.
Yeah.
Realize where it's coming from.
Yeah. And I think what you're touching on here is the key here is that what we perceive again to be this monster that's sabotaging is, a part of us that's, trying to do its best, and it needs to teach us something. There's something that we're meant to learn that once we learn it, can kind of let go of hold of the whatever protective extreme pattern is going on, right? Like keeping us, quiet in executive meetings, or, feeling like an imposter. And so, tell us a little bit more about how do we do that? Like, how do we connect with these, seemingly, appearing monsters, right? How do we connect with them and help them to feel safer, to let go of their strategies so we can be free to do what we want to do?
We call it the 3C method: catch, confront, change. So the first thing you have to do is, as that negative thought is coming, you got to catch it. And typically, there's some sort of an emotional or physical sign that it's coming. For me, it's like my stomach gets in a knot, my shoulders get tight, and I think to myself, all right, Alex is trying to come in the room with me. So once I know that it's happening, then I have to confront it and say, wait a minute, is that true today? Or is that just an old tape playing from when I was a kid? Is it real? Is it accurate? Is it helpful? And typically it's not. Then I say to myself, you change it, right? What's a more real and true message that my maverick, the monster's companion, that my maverick can give me? So my monster might say, I haven't done this, I'm scared. Maverick will say, wait a minute, you haven't done it yet, but you can learn, right? I'm more there to listen to me. Wait a minute, you're a good speaker. You always get standing ovations. Put that thought aside. You're going to do great. It worked. It's actually based on cognitive behavioral therapy, which is probably one of the best, most prevalent and highly regarded theories of mental health that exists. And 70 years ago, it's old. It's around for a long time.
Can you tell us about that, about
Well,
CBT?
CBT is basically the 3 Cs. They call it a little bit different, but it's that process of recognizing it in the moment, challenging its veracity, then changing the message. As Marshall would say, it's simple, but it's not easy. It takes courage, takes discipline, it takes persistence, because it doesn't happen all at once, right? As you well know. It's like limiting beliefs, right? How do you challenge limiting beliefs? Using our 3C method to catch, confront, and change lets you show up as your best self.
So how do we do it? Can you guide us through that?
I think the first step, Barrett, is to be attuned to your body, as your emotions are sending you messages. Some people, they start tapping their fingers. Other people have different ways of dealing with anxiety and stress. When you feel that anxiety rising, notice it and figure out where it's coming from. What am I thinking that's making me so anxious? And the next question is why, right? Is it true today? Or is that something that I outgrew years ago? And if that's the case, then you change the message. And if the anxiety is real, then you think about the best way to deal with it, to power through. Because we have more ability than we realize. One of my favorite quotes in the book is Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I think how we think about things changes everything, right? How you think about something impacts how you feel about it, which drives how you act. We've got a think, feel, act triangle. Because that's what happens, right? So you've got to catch it when you're thinking it, change how you feel about it, and then act accordingly.
So what if, we pause and we ask ourselves, is it real? Is it true? And parts of us are like, yeah, it is. You really aren't good enough at this or that, or, you're not worthy of this or that. Then what? How do we shift that?
If it's really accurate today,
Yeah, like if I ask myself, like, let's say I've got a presentation coming up and, I say to myself, I'm not a good presenter, let's just say. And then, let's say somebody does that and they're like, well, it is true because I remember, two presentations ago that, this thing happened, maybe I stumbled on a few words or whatever, right? So we can give ourselves evidence that the false belief, right, is true, but it feels very true to us. So how do we shift that when it's not so easy?
so you say to yourself, wait a minute, I've given 4 other presentations where I got a standing ovation. And actually, a woman I met through Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches, Joelle Crawford, she goes on Good Morning America all the time. She's written a book. She's a great speaker. She created a dig folder. Damn, I'm good. And every time she gets a message about something she's done well, she just drops it in the folder. So when she's thinking about, wait a minute, I'm not going to be good enough for this, she pulls out her dig folder and says, wait a minute, I am good enough because look at all this praise I've gotten. It's confronting yourself with the evidence and not stopping at that first, wait a minute, I stumbled over a word 2 presentations ago. Looking at the evidence in total, right?
Yeah. This is very, very powerful. And I think that our state as we do this is relevant as well. So, for example, how Marshall says kind of to take a breath, there's something about managing our state, self-regulating our state before we ask that.
Exactly.
I'm asking
Yep.
the question from a distressed state, I'm less likely to access the truth or to even perceive a possibility that
Exactly.
I can do what I want to do, let's say, or that I am worthy of it. And so how do we create that pause for a moment where when it's really hard to access evidence that our limiting belief is not true? Like, how do we shift our state?
Well, the first thing, it sounds so simple, is to breathe. Just breathe. Take the time to breathe. Breathing deeply, breathe out deeply. And get yourself in a calmer state so that you can look at the real evidence instead of the one thing that's punching you in the stomach.
Yeah. We had a guest on the show in the past, Byron Katie, who has these 4 questions, similar to what you're describing. And I find that what you are teaching, what she's teaching, is so important in this day and age, where we have repeated to ourselves these stories so many times that we have convinced ourselves they're true, so much so that we can't even see beyond the story. And so, what you're describing of just taking a breath, pausing, and just being curious,
Exactly.
is really powerful. And also sometimes, as you kind of talked about this woman, how she's got her folder, right? Where, that's evidence, right? She can open that up, whether it's on her phone or a physical folder, right? And just kind of see like, oh, right. These people have said these things sincerely about me, and that helps those parts of us just kind of soften, because oftentimes these parts, these, so-called monsters, are so young that they haven't had the life experience that we've had. They're kind of frozen in time at a certain age.
That's exactly right.
They weren't there when we had the standing ovation. They weren't in the room when, someone gave us a sincere compliment. So just showing that to them oftentimes helps them to just soften and realize we're just not those kids anymore.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And everyone can have a dig folder, right? Not just Joelle. It's such a simple and great idea. Just to collect evidence that you are enough, you are good enough. You're smart, you're courageous, you're fluent, got messages that people want to hear.
Yeah. And sometimes if we don't have yet testimonials or things like that, we can ask people,
Exactly.
friends of ours, like, hey, why are we friends? What do you see in me? And sometimes when we ask that a few times, we get beyond the surface level of you're a great friend, you're always there for me, and we see the magic that we may not be able to see through our own eyes. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
So for those individuals that are listening now and they're saying, Suzy, I hear you, and I am just overwhelmed with anxiety. There's so much happening in my life. I'm scared about my work, what's going on in the world with all the polarizations and AI and all this stuff. Like, how can this really help me when there's just chaos around me? What difference does it make what I think?
We wrote a book to be a kind of a playbook for people. So there are lots and lots of exercises in it. And if people take the time to do the reflection and the deep thinking and the digging back into the past, it really does make a difference. In fact, one of the leaders that Ryan contacted said, I filled out the whole workbook. It's not a workbook per se, but every chapter has exercise that it could do. And taking the time to really think about what your monster messages are, where they came from, what the truth is, really does help. And we've got some Headamentals, some practice exercises where we give a scenario and then ask people to think about how you catch, confront, and change what's happening in that little case study. There are 4 or 5 of them in the book, so that kind of helps too.
And I'm wondering if you might be willing to kind of guide us, if you will, for people who are listening or watching, and they're like, okay, I have a scenario in mind where I maybe doubt myself or I feel some unease about. Are you willing to kind of guide us through some questions that can help us to maybe shift our perspective?
Sure.
Yeah.
So what's the scenario?
Oh, okay. So let me think of one. I was going to say more generally, but okay. So I'll make one up. Well, okay. I'll share with you a real one. And this morning that showed up, and it was like, whoa, where did that show up? So it's my 50th birthday. I think I mentioned that to you before we got on the line. And
Happy birthday.
thank you. And I woke up to this beautiful kitchen table full of, much tea flowers and cards and just really nice things. It's after a nice surprise party this past weekend. And there were two beautiful packages on the table. And they were packages for jewelry, nice jewelry.
Oh, wow.
Wearing the earrings right now. And my first thought when I opened that is realizing that it's real. I was like, whoa, that's too much. I said to my husband, that's too much. And I felt the feeling inside was like a split moment of I'm not worthy of that. Now, I've done a lot of work on myself. So it was like, oh, that's interesting that showed up. And it's very real. It showed up. Right? There were many aspects to it. It was like, okay, there's so many people suffering in the world, and for what this cost, we could help so many people. And that was a part of it. And a part of it is, what if I lose it? Because I lose things. Like, oh my gosh, I don't want to lose anything. Yeah. So like all these thoughts, but the essence of it, the root of it was, I'm not worthy of having this. And
You know what?
consciously, I can give myself evidence that I am. But I mean, truthfully, that is what these sweet parts of me kind of just said in the moment.
And where is that coming from? What message did you get as you were growing up, or in your first job or your second job or whatever, that you are not worthy of being gifted nice things?
Yeah. So consciously, I can't think of anything like that. I mean, what I did grow up with is, about not spending too much money. And, when I grew up, we didn't have a lot of money. And so I remember to go, we used to go to Kmart, the red light sale or blue light
Right, 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 right,
sale. And,
right.
and
Yeah,
I had a lot of secondhand stuff from my sister and from other people, because there were times where my dad was a student, or we left Israel when I was very young without a lot of money because I was sick. So things happened very fast. And there were some difficult years there, where I didn't buy new things. Even to this day, it's hard for me to pay full price for stuff, because I'm always like, okay, where's the sale? Where's the discount? Where's the promo code? Right. And again, it's not logical, because now I can afford to, buy most things that I want. And yet there is this, like, I need to get a deal, or I need to, it's too much. So that's where I think that's rooted in, just right now in the moment. Yeah.
but I heard you say it's no longer true, right?
It's no longer true.
So how can you change that message,
So
knowing
right,
what you say to yourself?
yeah. So what showed up for me right now is kind of like a both and kind of approach, because I was like, okay, check, that's not true. And then there was the other part about, but we could use the money that was used to purchase this to help so many people who are suffering, right, locally and around the world. And then my thought, as you were kind of talking, was, what, it's a both and. I can do this, and I can, which we do,
Exactly, exactly.
it was that both and kind of softened it a little bit. So it's not so rigid, like if I do this, then I can't do that, or I shouldn't do this because I have less for that. So I think right now what's coming to mind is that both and approach kind of softens things, right? Like sometimes I could feel a little less confident about something, and at the same time I could honor what I've done, and right. So and that yet kind of approach that you added for us, really being
Right.
an expert yet, and I've, compared to where I was last year, I've made some headway, and I'm proud of that. So yeah, this was very helpful. Thank you. I didn't plan to talk about that today, but hey, it's real and it showed up. So
And,
thank you.
and it is a journey, Verit. It is a journey,
And as we now kind of generalize this for everybody listening, that it might not be their birthday, or they may be a jewelry today, right? Like what is the heart of the message? What do you really want them to believe?
I think you said it at the top of the show. The monster is just trying to keep you safe, protect you from things that are no longer a risk. Playing old messages that aren't true anymore. The monster is well-meaning, but she has an outdated playbook. And you've got to just question her, talk with her, understand where she's coming from, so you can realize what's true and what's not.
Yeah. So for those individuals that are like, okay, how do I do that? How do I speak to my hearts?
I think our book takes you through a whole series of exercises that build on each other. And I think we've done it in a way to be safe and not do too much too fast. But I also think if you can get yourself to be curious rather than scared, it becomes an interesting journey, right? And the truth is that our brains are programmable. We're the programmers.
Mm-hmm.
And so often, if the pain is worse than the cure, people will make the effort.
Mm-hmm.
And if your monster is really haunting you, then give it a try. You've got nothing to lose. You can gain peace and certainty and calmness. And if you're a leader, a better, more stable influence on the people that you love and people that you work with.
And there are so many options these days for people to do this. I mean, first of all,
Exactly.
go see a mental health professional that can guide them.
Right.
If there's some
Right.
major trauma or anything like that has happened, or they're just need some help. And there are wonderful books like yours. There are many tools and techniques. Even on this show, we've had guests like Dr. Richard Schwartz, who started Internal Family Systems, who guides through some guided practices. We've had experts on EFT, emotional freedom techniques, tapping, and other techniques called havening techniques and heart math techniques, and many different tools that are available, readily available, at no cost for people
Right.
to safely go inward. And at the very least, just notice how they feel, right? Just starting by asking, like you did, right? The capture, what is happening right now, right? In your case, right? Alex just walked into the room. Oh, what am I noticing in my stomach?
Right. Right.
What, in my forehead, in my shoulders and neck? What if anything, am I noticing? I think even just taking that step is profoundly powerful. And
Exactly.
and we also know that it can interrupt, some
Yeah.
of the old, circuits that are being run.
Right.
And it's a very gentle approach. And like you said, curiosity just goes, and sometimes it's not necessarily even curiosity or fear. Like I can have some fear and I can be curious,
Of course. Of course.
to just notice, maybe not necessarily even fix, just notice, you know. Um, so tell me about maybe a situation in your life, if you'd be open to sharing with us, where you used these tools, maybe an experience that you had that you were able to shift and what difference that made.
The one that's so vivid in my mind, my sister was 6 years older than I was. When I was 11, she convinced one of her really cute teenage friends to ask me out to the movies. I had to promise not to tell, and I couldn't tell my mother, my dad, anyone, couldn't tell anyone. He was going to pick me up on Sunday night at 6 o'clock. And I fretted all week long what to wear, how much of my allowance to bring. His name was Doug. He was adorable. Well, what am I going to talk to Doug about? We were sitting at the front door at 6 o'clock, 6:10, 6:20, 6:30. He never came. Just a big joke. But that created a feeling of shame and lack of worthiness that bloomed in me and lasted for years. It led me to make really bad choices about who I dated. Blessedly, by the time I got married, I was I'd gotten past it. But it really taught me that I wasn't enough. And it was really hard to realize that I was enough, that I was worthy, that I deserved to be picked up and taken out to the movies. So painful. Because I couldn't tell anyone, right? If I could have told someone, that I could have processed it real time. But having to keep it a secret at 11, I felt stupid. I felt ashamed. I felt like an idiot, you know? But obviously, many, many, many years later, that I can bring that feeling back, like I'm sitting at the front door waiting for Doug.
Wow.
And now I can say to myself, you know what? That was just a rotten trick, rotten joke. And I deserve better.
Or maybe that was the universal gift of that joke for you.
Yep.
Know that you truly do deserve better, to really know it. Yeah.
Yes.
You to know it. Yeah. Many of us have had, experiences like what you're describing. And I think you're hitting on, like, what makes a trauma, right? And I'm not talking about what we might call a big T, where life was, in the literal sense, or physical survival was in danger. We have an event that was, unexpected, where we felt alone. Even if we were with people, we felt that sense of, I'm alone, I can't talk to people, or, this is, I am experiencing this on my own, and not having the resources. Right at 11, you didn't have the exercises from your
Right.
things that you've learned over the years, and and that it was a distressing event, right? There was a threat, a danger, because you had planned for this, and so that those situations, which are significant emotional events, lead us to make certain decisions, as you did. And so this is the very thing that we're talking about here, right? Is that anytime we're feeling what we might call a negative emotion, it's because parts of us are reliving something that
Yes.
we've experienced that we may not remember.
Right.
And this is where we just want to be really gentle with ourselves, because
Yes.
those quote unquote monsters are protecting us. Those sweet parts are protecting us from being hurt all over again. Right.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and they just don't know. They haven't lived anything beyond, in this example, 11, to see what a wonderful human you are, and that what happened had nothing to do with you and who you
Right.
are and your worthiness.
Exactly. But those significant emotional events, they trigger the amygdala, right? I mean, it holds tight on anything that was really a powerful emotion.
Tell us about the science of that, like in detail, because I think many people are like, they've heard about the amygdala, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and like, what actually does it mean when I'm feeling some version of distress in my life, or when I doubt myself? What's actually happening in my body?
It's a it's the amygdala is like an almond-shaped cluster literally in the middle of your brain, and it controls emotions. And when something happens that is emotional, it's thinking that it's prehistoric. I mean, it's from days when we had no ability to be safe, when there could be danger around any corner, whether it was a wild animal or a warring tribe. Um, so it got stuck there. And evolution is all about survival of the fittest. So our brains are programmed to be safe rather than bold or brave, trying to keep us all alive. And that's the amygdala hijack, right? When something happens that triggers you, it's because it's equating something that's not life threatening, like an argument with your boss or a disapproving look from your boss, with something that really was life threatening. It can't distinguish the difference. And my client Matt says it's my reptilian brain. When that happens, it's like that's my brain from thousands of years ago taking charge. It's protective. It's trying to keep you alive to procreate.
And so when we do the three C's, and can you remind me what they are again?
Catch it, confront, change.
So when we do that, thank you, and we're able to change the thought in the moment, what happens in our brain and body?
It, the message goes out of the amygdala to your frontal cortex, which is rational thought, right? You've got to get past the amygdala to get to the frontal cortex. It's interesting to me the way the brain is built, because I mean, it's designed to go through emotion before it gets to logical thought. And I suppose that is about survival, right? Because if there were no warning system in your brain, you wouldn't realize that danger was going to come at you shortly.
Suzy, I'm just so deeply grateful for the work that you, Ryan, and Rhett have done with this book, for, of course, you sharing what you've shared with all of us today, to come home to the truth and to come home to love, because all of these strategies are really intended to be very loving. And when we can be curious, we can, help these parts just release those burdens. So, our Alex or our Verid or whoever, can, really help us to experience even more joy and love and light and, you know,
Exactly.
wow,
Exactly.
human experience. So, how can we learn even more about the book, about you, the programs that you do?
The book will be published on October 28th. I'm very excited. Almost less than 6 weeks away. And I've got a website, Suzy Burke, PhD, and email me. Suzy Burke, PhD. Vera, thank you so much.
Oh,
It's always a pleasure to spend time with you.
it was my
Always.
to clarify the email. So did you say it's Suzy at SuzyBurke.phd? Is that what the email is?
Yes, it is. Thank you for clarifying. Yes, it is.
Thank you. And I, on a personal note, you're such a beautiful human. I'm so grateful that I've had a chance to get to know you a little bit over this past year. Suzy and I like to joke we were front row buddies at an event last summer. We got to know each other, and so we
Several events, actually.
that's right.
Every performance.
That's right. Every performance. And it was, it's just a delight. In life, we come across people that, just make us feel good and that are just so real. And you're one of those people. So thank you for sharing from your heart with all of us today. And I'm excited for people to access the book, do the exercises, and come home to their own true power and true self.
Thank you, Vera. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, game changers, it's Vered. I am so excited that you got to hear from Suzy Burke about Headamentals, about really the whole concept of our mindset and how important our thoughts are to our success and our well-being. Now, I invite you to check out episode 140 with Robert Dilts, who's one of the kind of godfathers, if you will, of belief change. He created something called Sleight of Mouth. Really a phenomenal human being. And he talked to us about the power of our beliefs and mindsets. And of course, that'll allow you to dive even deeper about how to create these shifts so that you could master your mindset and really be even more adaptable to changes in your life. So all my love, if you have not already subscribed, please do so. Share these episodes if you think they will help your family and friends. And thanks for being a part of our community. Bye for now.